And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dave Stone to show you these wonderful photographers' work.
Welcome, everybody. It's very exciting to be here and to see all of the wonderful work that folks are doing. I'm a photographer, and I really appreciate the work that others do. And I saw an awful lot of wonderful scenes that I know well, and some shots that I said, gee, I wish I was there. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was just the process of photography. In fact, the main thing is iPhone photography and how important iPhone photography has become in the world. There are literally, well, let me see if I can switch to here. Oh, no, I can't. iPhone photography just took over the world. I don't think Steve Jobs knew what he was releasing when he let it go, but now there are literally billions of iPhones out there, iPhones and Android phones, which means that there are billions and billions and billions of pictures being taken. And I say taken as something that I wish people wouldn't do. I want you to stop taking pictures. And what I want you to do is consider the process of making photographs instead. Go out, look at your scene, try and figure out what it is that you're actually photographing. What is it that caught your eye? And then stop and study it and learn about it. And then you need to learn how to control your focus, your exposure, and number one, your composition. And composition is something that gets so easily overlooked when you're just pointing and shooting and pointing and shooting and pointing and shooting. So there are some tricks on the iPhone that I wanted to share with you. I actually teach a good number of iPhone classes, and I found it to be a very rewarding thing to do because a lot of folks don't realize what they have in their hands. So the first rule of thumb I use is it's not a phone, it's a camera. It just has this great app, sometimes great app, that's a phone. So if you flip it around that way and you start thinking, this is a camera I've got in my hand, your whole mindset will change, and all of a sudden you're a photographer, not somebody just snapping pictures. And I think that that is really key to the process of making photographs. So stop taking pictures, start making pictures. And you've got a wonderful, wonderful tool here. And if you can see this, a lot of people don't realize that there's a focus button right there on the screen. And it's working at the museum. At the MFA, I used to walk around and see people just going click, 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 not realizing that they weren't focusing and that they could. And I said, you know, all you need to do is poke. It's sort of like that ad to make all your junk go away. All you need to do is point. Well, on the iPhone, you can just find your composition and then poke at what your focus point is. What is the key thing that you want to have in focus? What is foreground in the image? If you're doing portraits, focus on the eyes. The eyes are the first thing someone goes to when they're looking at a picture of a person. But if you're out there in the wild, you're taking pictures of birds, for instance, which is tricky with an iPhone. You have to be pretty stealthy. But if you focus on your subject, then right away you've improved your photograph. And then on the iPhone, as soon as you hit that little focus button, there's a little sun that shows up next to it. And that is a slider that lets you control your exposure. So if you've got a bright scene or a dark scene, you can actually use that slider and make wonderful adjustments to the scene. And I strongly recommend that you go out and you test that and you hit focus and you look for that little sun that pops up and slide it around and see what it does, see the difference that it makes. The other thing that I think is really key with iPhone photography and with any photography is to really position yourself in a place where you can be steady, where you can hold your camera steady. And when you make that exposure, you're maximizing the sharpness. So the three keys to a good photograph is your exposure, your focus, and your composition. Now, there's a saying that I heard where you can pick two, but one of them has to be composition. And if you look at a lot of the classic photographs over the years that news photographers and wonderful photographers across the board have done, they aren't always everything in focus, or they aren't always everything perfectly exposed, but there's always that sense of composition that they have. And that's something that you have to train yourself to do. And composition is something that takes practice, 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 very much like playing the piano. So I tell my students in class, the one thing that I want you to do, shoot every day. The exercise of shooting every day, no matter what sort of photograph it is, or how simple it is, or how complicated it is, that exercise makes you better because you learn from what you've done, and you look and you see, well, that didn't work. Let me try something else. And that didn't work. Let me try something else. Oh, that worked great. Let's remember that. So do that process of making some photograph every single day. There are some photographers, some famous photographers who said that they were always making photographs, even if they didn't have their camera with them. They look at something, they're making a photograph. You need to start thinking like a photographer. And this iPhone is a wonderful, wonderful tool. The quality you get from this, if you're doing everything right, is spectacular. So in wrapping up, classes are always a good thing. Shooting every day is one of the best things. And learning about composition and how you can get everything that you want in your focus. Hey, look, that picture is behind me. How did I do that? Try and start thinking about your composition, and then nail your exposure, nail your focus, and you'll have something that is suitable for framing. But the one step that a lot of people don't do, and this is what I'm going to leave you with, is post-processing. And every one of these phones has built into it an editing tool where you can go in and you can process after the fact. And you'll find that there are things that you've captured in your image, subtle little details and stuff that can be brought out in post-processing. The one that comes in the phone, the editor in the phone, is excellent, but a better one is one called Snapseed, S-N-A-P-S-E-E-D. And I would recommend, it's a cheap download. It might even be free, but it really is a full-fledged editor. And if you go on to any of my sites, I'm Stoney Stone 68 on Instagram, and look at my pictures, most of them are done on the phone. Not all of them, but the majority of these days, I've just been processing on the phone and posting on the phone, and Snapseed is my go-to tool for that. So I want you to think about that. And if any of you ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. I love talking about photography, and I really, truly did love seeing some of the photography that went by in this gallery show. There's some spectacular photography being done in this town. Now, I have to say, it's easy in this town to find a good photograph, but you can maximize it. But we live in such a beautiful place, and the river is amazing. Oh, I did something today. I'm rambling, aren't I? I decided that I would put onto my Facebook page asking people to tell me a song about a river. And I got 70 so far, it's over 70 responses with people giving me names and titles and clips to go to and listen to, songs about rivers. So rivers are incredibly important to many different genres besides photography, and obviously to life. They're very, very important. And one of the most, I did a series this summer where when I started talking about this talk, actually it was in the spring, I went out and photographed all the bridges from Topsfield down, looking upstream and downstream. And one of the things that was striking during the drought was how still the river was. And that was just wrong. It was like looking at a pond because it wasn't moving. And it was so sad to see, and I'm glad that it's come back. And it's a cycle, I guess, but we have to preserve our river. And I think the Watershed is a wonderful organization for doing that. And I thank you.
Thank you to everybody who has joined this wonderful meeting. I'd like to actually raise a glass to this river. Look at this beautiful photograph, one after the other. And thank you, thank you, thank you. So cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you.